All right, guys, first project in the garage is this John Deere, it's a D110. You can see I've got the engine off, but the thing wouldn't crank over. It'd crank about half a revolution and then just lock up. So we tried a few different things. I checked valve specs again and they were all within spec. We even tried, we thought maybe it was a weak battery, so we hooked it up to a jump pack. It still wouldn't crank over. But you could, with your hand, turn the flywheel on top and get it to turn over. Turning the engine over by hand, I could hear something in the bottom of the motor, like clanking. A little rattle, sounded like there was some loose piece in there. So thought, that's not good. So I started doing some research, and it turns out that this motor has a camshaft that has a built-in compression release on it. So let me show you what I've got. Okay, so here's the engine. I've got it upside down. I drained all the oil out before I took it off the frame. I did pull this bottom cover off when it was still tipped up because I thought there might be some loose components in there, something broken, so I didn't want that falling up into the engine. So I took the bottom cover off. I did find a few components, and here's what it is. So normally camshaft goes in here. You can see the tappets here. And here is the camshaft. So the lobes look good, but you can see this little indentation here. So normally there is a little horseshoe piece that wraps around this camshaft, and as the engine starts turning faster, that horseshoe piece kind of swings out and spins a little rod so that it flattens out in this section. And here we've got the pieces that broke. So you can see this little tab normally had this pin up through it, and you can see how that pin is flat on one side. So as the crankshaft spins faster, this little pin will sit in there and flatten out, and it won't cause a little bump in the valve. So there's the bottom of the pin that fits into the crank there. So this is a pretty common failure on these. I don't think that Briggs has changed the design much, because here is the new camshaft. And so you can see a little horseshoe thing, spring loaded, and when the engine's turning fast, this thing is slung out, and you can see it makes so the camshaft is just smooth there. And then when it slows down, it makes just this little tiny bump, so it opens the valve just enough, and for a very short duration, to reduce the compression, and so it can get cranking over fast enough to get started. And then as the engine speed picks up, this thing swings out. So this little compression release looks basically the same. It's interesting that that one's got a letter J on it, and this is a letter G. So I don't know if that's revisions. So maybe they have revised it a little bit, or maybe that's a manufacturing date. Who knows? But I'm getting ready to put this back in there. I did find all of the little pieces of this in the bottom of the case here. It's pretty sludgy. So I've got some mineral spirits that I'm just gonna kind of rinse through that and get it cleaned out. I need to get a new oil filter. I do have the seal that goes down in here, a new seal and a new gasket, and the new camshaft. This camshaft came with replacement tappets. You can see these have just a little wear. Nothing that I can feel with a fingernail or anything, but you can see the wear mark on it. So I've got the new ones in, already down in there. I just used some 80-90 weight gear oil for some assembly lube, and I'll of course put some heavyweight oil on the cam lobes too. But I'm gonna get that cleaned out and this gasket cleaned off, get everything reassembled, and we'll put it back on the frame. All right, guys, so here it is. Got it all back together. I had to charge the battery up overnight, so let's see if it'll start. This mower was manufactured in 2014, so it's not terribly old. And you can see it's got 189 hours on it. So I've heard that the reason for this type of failure is usually because of a sudden shutdown, like the engine just stops and that little horseshoe piece just has too much acceleration and it comes to an immediate stop. I don't know if that's true or not, or how it seems reasonable, but I think going forward, just to avoid or try to avoid the same failure, is to throttle it way down before you turn the key off. So see if it'll start. So there we go. Cranking over, starting up just fine. Before, it wouldn't even really make a full revolution. It would just get stuck halfway through on the compression stroke. So we're starting good now. So if you have one of these Briggs Intek motors that just will not crank over, but you can turn it over by hand, I would guess that it probably has this same issue. You can check it if you pull the valve cover off here, and then turn the engine over by hand. If your intake valve doesn't rise just a little tiny bit on the compression stroke, your compression release is probably not working properly. And the common failure on this is that little horseshoe piece breaking off the cam. If yours is doing that and it's still having issues cranking over, it's probably a battery or a starter solenoid issue. I'll post links down in the description of the parts that I used. Everything all said and done, I had engine oil here, but for the camshaft, the gasket and the seal, I believe was around $87. So not a bad price. There are some aftermarket camshafts available. Reading the reviews on them, they're kind of iffy. I've seen some of them that said they only got 4 hours of usage before it failed again. So if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them down below. If you like what I do, give me a thumbs up. I got some more videos coming out soon. Until next time, we'll see you later.